Thank you for joining us for 2020 Census, What's at Stake. My name is Amber Stenger, and I'm co-president, along with Ellen Miller, of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County. With me today is League member Karen Wulfkuhle. Karen recently retired as the director of United Community Services, where she worked for more than 30 years. In her short time since she retired, she helped direct the League's affordable housing study, which has been instrumental in getting the county and the region to address this issue. And she also chairs Johnson County's Complete Count Committee, which is a team of local stakeholders created to educate the community on the importance of participating in the census. So thank you, Karen, for being here. Let's start with just the basics. Tell us a little bit about why we conduct a census.
All right. Well, we conduct a census because it's required by the Constitution. In Article 1 of the Constitution, it requires that every person in the country be counted every 10 years. And in addition, the Constitution states that that information should be used to inform representation as well as taxation. So the census is really a fundamental element of our democracy. And that count happens every 10 years, and so in 2020 we are conducting that count.
Okay, great. And who do we count?
We count every person who is living in the United States and 5 territories, and that includes persons who are citizens and non-citizens alike. So it is every person who resides here. If someone is just visiting the United States from another country and it's just that short term, that person is not counted. But if someone from another country is living here, residing here, and working, then they are counted. So it is a count of every person.
Okay. And how is Kansas affected by this census?
Just like every other state, Kansas is affected really by the primary purposes for the census. One, the census is used to determine the number of representatives that each house has in Congress. Since, I believe it's 1915, the Congress has been limited to 435 representatives. And so those representatives are parceled out to the state based on population. So currently Kansas has 4 representatives, and the census in 2020 will determine if we retain those 4 representatives or not. Estimates are that we will retain those 4, but other states are going to see some losses and other states see some gains just because of population shifts in our country.
Yeah.
The state also is affected because the data from the census is used for statewide redistricting, and that's according to the Kansas Constitution. So people in Kansas will see their representation change depending on what that data tells us and how that's used for redistricting that will occur in 2022.
Okay.
And the third way that Kansas specifically will be affected by the census is in terms of federal funds that comes back to this state. There are different estimates about how much in federal money is influenced by census data. Some of those estimates go up to as high as $1.5 trillion.
Wow.
So that's based on some federal funding and grants are distributed across the country based on population, some based on other characteristics, some are based on formulas that are derived using census data. So there are many different ways that dollars come to local states and communities. But the latest estimate and kind of the best estimate that we have is that Kansas gets about $6 billion a year that come based on information that's derived from the census. And that's for a whole host of programs that benefit local people, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and talk about that, how the money is used.
Okay. There are, again, a myriad of ways that those dollars are used. I'll just tell you this. In terms of that $6 billion, when that analysis was done by George Washington Institute of Public Policy, they looked at 55 of the largest government programs. And looking at those and the Kansas dollars, the top 5 program categories were medical assistance, and that was about $2.7 billion. So that's everywhere from Medicare, Medicaid, services to seniors, to other community health organizations. So health is really one of the largest categories. Next is education, $1.4 billion. Food and nutrition, $561.7 million. Transportation, $424.7 million. And housing, $388.6 million. So those are the largest categories of money that comes here to our state. And one of the reasons that it's so important that everyone is counted is that for every person who's missed, that means we lose the opportunity for those funds to come here. They go to other communities. There are a number of estimates around how much money's lost based on the number of people that aren't counted. One of them for Kansas is that for every person that's not counted, it's a loss of about $2,000 a year. There's another estimate that Mid-America Regional Council did, and their estimate is that an undercount could cost Johnson County $10 million a year in these public funds. So not counting everyone can have a significant impact, particularly on the safety net programs in our community.
Yeah. So what are the challenges of getting that complete count, especially in Johnson County?
Yeah, well, there are numerous challenges to a complete count, and there have been over all the years since the census, but this year particularly, even before the coronavirus, and we'll talk about that, but for one thing, there are some populations that are just historically undercounted. Surprisingly, one of those is young children. They are very often undercounted, often because many families are complex families. Children might live with a grandparent, or they split their time between parents. And so one doesn't count them because they think the other might. Or often if a family is lower income, there are so many other things in that family's life going on that filling out a form that comes in the mail or going online to fill it out just isn't a priority. Often renters are hard to count because they're transient, and they may miss getting that piece of mail that invites them to participate in the census. Persons that are minorities, persons of Hispanic origin. There's a lot of concern about how information will be used on people. The whole discussion about whether there would be a citizenship question or not has spurred a lot of concern about participating in the census. A recent study said that 70% of the population still believe there would be a citizenship question, even though there is no citizenship question on the census. So those have created concerns just about distrust about how information will be used. Another challenge it's both a challenge and a positive. For the first time, this census can be completed online. And so for many people, that is a simplification, that you can go online, complete that census for your household, and you're done. But for all of those households that don't have access to a computer, that creates challenges. So one of the things that we have been doing locally is identifying what were called assistance sites, places where people could go and get some help with access to a computer, get their questions answered so that they could complete their census online. Well, with the recent advent of closing of facilities, the libraries were all going to be assistance sites, and so as well as some social service agencies. So with the closing of so many places, there really are very few spots where someone can go and use a computer to complete their census.
But they can do it by phone, right?
They can do it by phone. There is a number that people can call to complete their census by phone, and someone with the U.S. Census Bureau will take that information. Yes.
And several languages.
Correct. 13 languages, including English, that you can call and do by phone. Online, there is information available in 59 languages, I believe. So there are ways that people, as well as Braille. So there are ways that people who are not native English speakers can complete the census.
So it's been such a whirlwind with the coronavirus. What is the Census Bureau saying at this point about its effect on the census count?
Yeah, well, I think just like with so many things, it's unknown. They had issued a statement in the last couple of days talking about pushing back some deadlines. The thing to keep in mind is that by statute, the census, results of the census are to be delivered to the president by December 31st, 2020, and to the states by, I believe it's April 1st, 2021. And so there is that deadline that currently exists. The Census Bureau is looking at ways to do some of the counting that needed to be done by census workers. And so I'm sure there'll be further information about delays that will be in place in order to be sure we can get the most complete count possible.
It just sounds like another challenge that could hinder, be another obstacle to people completing the census. So what can people do who are watching this video, what can we do to increase participation or help alleviate some of those barriers?
Yeah, well, I think it's, be sure you complete your own census within your own family and circle of contacts. Encourage them to do that. While there are legal restrictions against anyone completing a census for someone else, a family member can do that. So if you have an elderly parent or someone else in your family who's not able to do it themselves, a family member can help do that.
Okay.
So you might just be sure you're looking at that. The last Sunday of March, we had been encouraging faith communities to promote the census, often hearing from a trusted voice that the census is safe and confidential can be one way to encourage participation. So while congregations may not be meeting, there's still enough time that someone could put that in a bulletin or an e-newsletter or something to go out to congregations. So that would be another thing that could still happen.
So people could help spread the word through their social media networks and their coworkers, all of their normal networks. And then tell us about the timeline, just briefly. How do we know when it's time to fill out the census?
Well, the Census Bureau started mailing out their initial invitation last week. I got mine last week, so many people should already have that. Then there'll be a subsequent 3 mailings that will follow that. There'll be a reminder, then there'll be a paper questionnaire will come in the mail if you haven't completed it online already, and then there'll be a final reminder. And then after that, they'll start sending census workers out into the community. So that piece of the timeline may be delayed of when they start sending census workers out. But my understanding is there are 4 mailings that should come out to households if they haven't completed the census.
And the mailing describes what they need to do online, like instructions online, how to fill it out.
It will have an ID number for that address and tell you how to go online. It'll also include a phone number that if you want to call and do it online, or if you have if you want to do it by phone, or if you have questions about the census.
So by phone might be a nice stopgap measure that while the libraries are closed and all restaurants that have Wi-Fi are closed and all of that. So and then also we can post links where people can see the actual questions that are asked, and we can post your PowerPoint that goes into more detail about some of the statistics and the importance of counting everybody. Is there anything else that we should make sure that we stress for people?
I just think it's interesting that I was looking today at a list of 50 ways census data are used that the Census Bureau had put out as we were working on our outreach plans. And in light of the current circumstances with the coronavirus, I thought it was interesting in those 50 ways, many of these are health-related ways that census data is really helping us as a country respond to this. Assessing the potential for spread of communicable diseases, facilitating scientific research, distributing medical research, planning health and educational services, planning for hospitals, nursing homes, clinic, and the location of health services, designing public safety strategies, creating maps to speed emergency services to households. So the census has a myriad of uses that help us as a country, both from protecting us from a health and safety to a economic development to a safety net. The census really is one of those fundamental underlying core elements of our democracy and the way our country operates.
Okay, that's great. So I just want to thank you for
Thank you.
sharing this information, and thank everyone for watching. Remember, take this opportunity to help shape our future. Fill out the census, encourage your family and friends to do so, and just make sure that we're all counted. Thank you.